This is Peggy Anne Salz. This is The Groove. This is where we look at opportunities and innovators at that very exciting intersection of what I call the three C's, right? Context, commerce, community. And I've got another C, one we don't think about as much, but we really do have to because it is where companies, brands not only need to succeed, it's the only place they can really succeed if you think about where we are in a privacy first world. That is creativity. Creativity. It's the way to drive connection and conversion. So yes, more C's for you there. But what is the creative process? How can it be made accessible to everyone? How can we all make a contribution? And is that even a good idea? Which is a question in itself. So it is a topic that is made for my guests today. I have purposely brought them together, and I am really genuinely thrilled to have you both. So I'll introduce you and we will let the chemistry start, I think is the way to put it. We have Walter Geer, third, proud to say, my friend and colleague, a prominent and prolific figure in digital advertising and the creative industry overall, currently serving as the Chief Creative Officer for Innovation in North America at VML. And throughout your career, Walt, well, you have taken a bold and exciting path. It's been wonderful to watch you rise and shine, blending technology, design, storytelling, everything from patents to new ad formats, pioneering now new customer experiences. You are truly a trailblazer and also an advocate for diversity and inclusion within the creative industry. So we are very fortunate to have you, Walt. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we have Imsety Taylor, who is an innovator and a maker, and we'll understand why we have the two of you together shortly. But Imsety, you also, of course, champion an inclusive approach to creativity, but also at another level, because you're all about unlocking individual talent, right? Regardless of technology, skills, skill sets, it's about innovating and driving emotional connection with technology. And that has impact as well. So again, great to have you as well, Imsety. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I am really pleased. I have you both for a reason. But first I want to know, did you meet in real life yet?
No,
We have not.
yeah, we have not, but
Okay.
I'm sure it happens sooner rather than later.
I'm hoping.
It's an interesting story too, Peggy. It's because I get a random email from, or actually a text message from a mutual friend of ours, Manish. Manish Duo is a good friend of mine, and he's like, "You got to meet this kid, man. This kid is so talented. He reminds me of like a young you. You got to meet him. He's hungry. He's eager." And I was like, "All right, you just make it happen sometime." Next thing you know, and he gives us an introduction, and Imsety actually sends an email. You could talk about Imsety with this incredible introduction video, which I've never seen anyone, kind of put their time and thought and energy behind, because most introductions are, "Hey, I'd love to get to meet you. Can I talk to you for 10 minutes? And here's a little bit about what I do." And some of them are really drawn out and long, and it's hard, right? Like, I don't mean to be an asshole, but like, I don't have a ton of time, right? And I'm working a ton. So, you got to be short, quick, and to the point. And when I saw what he had sent me, I was just like blown away.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating hearing a lot of the commentary around that video, and it's two sides to it. In some ways, when I made that video, I knew exactly what I was doing, but then there's also the side where I genuinely was just trying. I genuinely wanted to be myself, and so the first thing that came to my mind, in the back of my mind, was like, "Hey, I want to make a video." But not from I really gotta make a video because I want to see if I can get this thing. It's just like, it's the same sort of reasoning behind why you mentioned like it's hard to sound kind of like, man, a lot of people have kind of stuck on time. You mean well, but you see a big email, you kind of don't really want to engage with that as as much as you want. And so I knew a video would not only just be efficient, but also be a fun way of just simply just being myself and telling my story.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great. Engaging, right? And that's what we do in advertising.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you get someone's attention very quickly? How do you engage them? How do you keep them there as long as possible? And then get them to do a thing. And in his case, it was like, get my time, which then I took it and then shared it on social because I was like, this is so amazing. Which then in turn, got you, thousands of views and connections, etc.
It's also cross-pollinating that. That's why I brought the two of you together. I thought, no matter what you're doing in the real world or will, I thought, you each define creativity in your own terms. And that's why I found so exciting because you're, Imsety, when we were chatting, it's all about finding things in the everyday, right? And Walt, we know each other for a while back when you were explaining to me these new ad formats that guess what we have where you're about more like that blending. I'm excited by those two. How do those definitions, do you think, fit together, and how are they maybe blending as well in your two worlds? Maybe there aren't those two worlds.
In this modern day world that we have now, right? And that, when we walk out our doors, every single one of us is holding onto one of these mobile devices. So how we engage with a consumer, how brands engage with a consumer, almost always has to be done through some form of technology, right? It's just the way the world moves now. And I think the biggest thing right now that technology and great design allows us to do is it allows us to give someone, engage a potential customer or consumer when they need you, right? Like a consumer shouldn't have to ask for something, when they need it. If I walk into my house and I have like 11 Alexa devices around my house, and the first thing I usually do when I walk in is I say, Alexa, turn on kitchen, right? And boom, my lights come on and whatnot. I shouldn't have to then walk into my kitchen and go, oh my gosh, that light bulb's out. I need to go get a light bulb. Let me now go onto Google or Amazon and get a light bulb, or wherever it is I buy my light bulb. Like Alexa should automatically say, the light bulb above your island is currently, the first light bulb above your island is currently out. Boop, and then programmatic advertising, right? Then make a quick decision. And there's a sale right now at Home Depot for Philips Hue light bulbs for $9.99. Would you like me to purchase? Yes. Boom, done. It's at my house 3 hours later. Right. So that's the way technology and good design allows us to come together in ways that are meaningful and impactful.
And that impact, Imsety, it's also in everyday, in the common. That's what I wanted you to explore, how you're bringing the requirement for that friction-free experience, and making it every day.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because there's this company called Valve, and they big, they create Steam and that sort of thing. One of the biggest market gaming, like digital gaming markets in the world. And it made me think of that quote that I think the CEO of Valve said, with Gabe Newell, which he said that piracy is not it's not like a marketing problem. It's a convenience problem. And the more you can make it easy for consumers to be like, hey, this is so easy. You can come in here, you can buy your game, boom, it's downloaded. Is there's no big DRM problem and that sort of thing. Is like it makes it so easy that it's actually harder to pirate the game. And so even though there's cost that more money, it actually ends up, I guess, like benefiting the consumer in the long run because that convenience factor is so important. But in terms of like authenticity, like being real in the creative space and being like in that world of, like, I remember, Peggy, we talked about in the original call of how a lot of people, especially after Apple kind of put in that blocker for tracking, and now people allow giving the control to the user to ask, do you want to track or not? And now people are back to the same almost square one, which is like, how can you be authentic to the situation? How can you attract that consumer? And and we end up coming to a similar conclusion where it's like, hey, the solution is to actually be real and to be authentic and to just be yourself. And that's sort of how I approached like this video. Like when I made the video for Walt, what I like to call the intro video. I was like, okay, in order to really make this authentic, I'm gonna literally just tell my story, and I'm gonna do it the way that I want this to say that story. And I've noticed there's been some dialogue, especially in Walter's comment section on that original post, where there's some people like, "Oh man, video resumes are cool, but now we all gotta do video resumes in order to stand out. Like, what's the big deal? You were in the Black community for doing this." Some people were kind of hinting on these concerns, and I think my response to that is it's less about the medium and it's more about the overall intention and the message. I simply chose video and motion design as my medium because that was my language I spoke. I used my whole toolbox in order to tell my story. But if the roles were different, if I were a writer or something like that, maybe instead of making a video, I make a poem about Walt, something like that, and make it so it stands out from a regular email paragraph. Or if I was, a DJ, maybe I'll come up with like a whole set for about my story or something like that. It's less about taking something and forcing it together and more about actually going with the flow and using that as a strategy.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Walt, because, he's bringing up a great point that you need to be creative in the area that you're creative, but again, authentic. And how many times have we heard or read that advertising needs to be authentic? And we talk about whether or not we can even combine these. I mean, can you be creative and drive emotional connection? Or is it, or how do you reconcile that? Or yeah, you got your point right there. Absolutely. Well, how can you be so sure?
So I'll start with a quote. Maya Angelou says, people remember people will forget what you did and done, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. Right. So advertising, what we do is entirely about eliciting emotion. Right? Entirely about eliciting an emotion, right? Our thing is we want to make you feel happy. We want to make you feel excited, perhaps make you feel sad, right? Or sappy or upset or angry. This is what our job as creatives is to do. And so in order to get there, I always tell people like a creative is never a good creative unless you have a good strategist behind you. Right? It's like a marriage, right? It's like, oh, you need that support to actually work to create incredible creative and create incredible solutions. So, a strategist role is to really allow me to know every single in and out about the brand, about the individuals I'm trying to reach. Again, as I said earlier, where they go, what they do, and how they do it, right? And then technology and, of course, real-time data or first-party data, right, will allow us to get all of those insights in real time and then deliver stuff that perhaps is dynamic messaging, dynamic creative, and so on and so forth. It's the only way, like the only way to do any type of advertising is all about how we elicit some form of emotion. And to Imsety's point too, like people today don't just want to buy your product because it's cool. People want to buy your product because you're also doing shit for the community. You're also doing things to help people. So like, what else are you doing? What is your point of view on climate? And like, what is your point of view on a whole slew of things? Because now people think that like, if I'm giving you my money or if I'm giving you my dollars, I want to make sure I'm supporting an organization that has the same beliefs as me. So this is why you're starting to see brands now do more purpose-driven work, right? On top of the normal traditional advertising they do around their products. I did one with Advil just recently called the Pain Equity Project. And people are like, well, why did it make sense for Advil, right? Well, the whole intent was, the Black community, when you go into a medical office, the ER room or your doctor's office, whatnot, we are not treated the same as other white people. And a lot of that time is because of systemic racism that has been baked into the healthcare system for decades, right? There are books in medical schools up until 8 years ago, they were saying false things like Black people have thicker skin or we have, high threshold of pain. Stuff is completely not true, right? And while it's wild, but like Advil's kind of slogan is treating pain at the source, right? Well, this was treating pain at the source. And it just made sense for them to go outside of their traditional marketing, what they traditionally do, and go out and say, how can we actually fix this problem and really get to the source of this problem? And that was, raising awareness by creating, documentary where we actually showed like 6 patients' stories, personal stories. It was then, trying to actually go out and actually change medical textbooks and whatnot. We actually created curriculum that's going into all these medical schools starting the end of this year, starting with Morehouse and oh my gosh, in New Jersey, Rutgers University. Right, we partnered with Morehouse Medical School to actually create that, and with Black Health, a nonprofit out of Atlanta. And then, of course, after that, we went out and actually created a whole site where we actually have tons of different things that individuals who are Black patients can now use to be educated before they walk into a doctor's office. Right, and of course, you do something separate like this as a brand. People see it as, wow, I can support them. When I go in and buy medication, it might not now be Tylenol, it might be Advil, because I understand and know that Advil is out for my best interest.
It's a beautiful example because it also shows that you can be creative, but not in the sense of just, what's coming up soon, Cannes and getting an award. This is about resonating so deeply with your audience. It's so important to understand your audience also. I mean, this is one example, Walt, but if you have another maybe where understanding your audience has profoundly influenced your creative decision or your creative output.
I'll tell a really, really quick one then, right? And I think I might have told you this. We might have talked about this a while ago, Peggy, but it's just always been one of my favorite creatives. So Netflix came to us and said, "Hey, we have this show called Black Mirror, season 3. We want to scare the shit out of as many people as possible." And I was like, "All right." They were like, "Well, I was like, well, what's your target audience?" They were like, "Everyone." We were like, "Everyone?" Everyone basically who has a television. So long story really short, I said, okay, well, what if, working with my brilliant team, I said, what if we actually tracked every individual's home? So we identified their home, and then we actually hacked into Google Street Maps to basically pull into an ad a picture of the outside of your house as you're looking at it,
Whoa.
and then basically tell them we know everything about them. So like it was like the screen, it was for mobile devices. So the screen cracked a little bit to drive your attention down to the ad, right? Once you looked at the ad, it said, "We know what you're watching, but do you know who's watching you?" And then we type in your address, and then showed an image of the outside of your house, and then it kind of faded out to like season 3, Black
Whoa.
Mirror, and literally 90% of the publishers that we ran that on pulled it within 48 hours, because every single person was like writing to the company saying, why is this ad up? Why is this ad tracking me? This ad has my house. Like, people freaked out, but it worked in line with the show, because their show is about the use of technology and how it's like cause all this chaos and drama and kills people and whatnot. So like it fits so seamlessly.
They didn't get it. They didn't see the brilliance of it. It's brilliant. I do remember when you were putting that together, Walt, that is incredible. Imsety, of course, you see it from the other perspective. It's about technology and creative vision with you, not necessarily about scaring the shit out of people, but you can share a story if you've done that too. But again, you have to understand your audience, but at a different level. Maybe you can also share an example where understanding your audience, profoundly influenced that creative technology output, your creative decision.
Sure. I mean, I can go. This actually nicely is really relevant to my like very recent experience at Beeple Studios. For those who don't know, he is like a really big like digital artist. He's known for making a picture every day for 15 years straight. I think 17 years now, and he has done work for like big music artists, that sort of thing, making music videos, that sort of thing. But he's kind of gotten big in the NFT space a few years back, selling one of his art pieces for like $69 million. And he ended up creating this really huge studio based out of Charleston, South Carolina, that has this venue with projectors on the walls, and it's like a big U-shaped sort of stage where there's art exhibited on there. There's stage visuals. There's all sorts of stuff on there. But about 2 weeks ago, he hosted this event called like Digital Art Deathmatch. And it was basically like Hunger Games, but with like artists. So there was like 40 people, including me. I was one of the competitors on that event. And at the end, there had to be one winner doing that thing. And in order to compete, in order to be in there were different rounds. You were kind of part of like different brackets, that sort of thing. And I was in one of the brackets. And what was interesting is that you had like 15 minutes max to make a piece of artwork with you were in the middle of the room. There was a lot of people. You were literally like sort of like recorded, like almost like a reality TV show with like music. There's literally Mortal Kombat music playing in the background as you were working on your stuff. I was coming from a space where I kind of have a more design approach. While a lot of people in that space, Beeple is known for his surreal art. He makes some very big, sort of, one would call, interesting pieces. every now and again. And so he has attracted this audience that's expecting very like a lot of 3D sort of elements, a lot of big, very like bizarre themes and sort of stories being told. So when I came in, right, I sort of came in there from the perspective of, oh, graphic design. Oh, pretty, very, very good composition. Everything has to be almost like a poster on that you put up on a wall, right? Where other people are coming in from a perspective of making something like a really beautiful 3D piece of artwork with maybe like figures or props that's floating around in space, whatever. And I had the prompt for that bracket was I think metaverse. That was the prompt, and you had 15 minutes to make a picture with the word metaverse, or I just that reminds you of the word metaverse. And I created this whole like very nice, at least I had for 15 minutes, I guess I made this very nice little composition with like purple cube sticking out, and it had a nice little type, that sort of thing. And for the limited time that I had, it came out okay, for what it was. But then I saw other people's work, right? And then they were doing a little bit more like not even type. There's no type. There's no text. It's like straight up just you took a camera and you put it in this little slice of life. I think there was one person who did a skull with with some props in the background. That's it, and it makes you think, how does that remind you of metaverse? But then it's like, okay. When you were done with your artwork, literally 15 minutes later, it was on Beeple's or Twitter page that he could, or X, what do you call it, and it was up on there. They could vote for it. They could do all that, and then they can choose which one was the best. So it was a community vote. And what was interesting, even though mine was very literal interpretation of metaverse, it literally had the text metaverse on the top and bottom. Mine didn't win. And then I was like, What ended up winning was another one with the skull in the background and the props, right? And while it looked more interesting, maybe from a like 3D perspective, I thought mine would be like more like eye popping. But then I realized I was making it for the wrong audience the whole time. I was making it for sort of like what maybe someone in my community would want, in the motion design community. But this is on Beeple's Twitter. So people are going to vote what they recognize. So they recognize that more surreal, out of pocket sort of art. And so they vote for that. So then I realized, oh,
No, the audience.
shoot,
Yeah.
I should have known my audience right then and there, right? So that was a really like very interesting thing, because I think had I went into that challenge with a mindset of what would a Beeple fan would like, I think that would have changed the outcome of that competition,
Interesting tension, though, isn't it, Walt? I mean, if you think about it, it's sort of like this. We're also at the time where it's like MVP creative, right? You don't, I mean, Imsety, I know him. I've chatted with him a couple times. He's going to give it his all, right? And others are just going to say, like, get it out there, get it up there. Is there no blending of what Imsety, maybe yourself and others want, and also what we think maybe audiences want? I don't know. Love to hear your weigh in on that.
Pieces, when you present ideas, like pieces will always get cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. It's like, it's hard to limit the chefs, in the room, in the kitchen. But this is what happens. This is why also any work that I see at some of these award shows that wins, and anyone that's even could submit work that's good enough to enter can and make it into a final round, like hats off to those people, because it is so hard to do really incredible creative. Like people really don't understand how hard it is to do some of this, like that Beyonce spot, right? For at the Super Bowl. Do you know how hard it is just to get someone like her, right? Let alone to then partner with someone like her. And also, when you partner with someone like her, because one of our agencies at WPP did that overview, I believe, to partner with someone like her, they gave up all creative control. They were like, well, this is what we want to do. And it's, thanks for your idea. Now I'm going to show you what we're going to do. And your just job is to say, okay, right? So even that is hard for a creative because and sometimes you have to kind of swallow that, pill and say, well, all right, let's ride with it. So doing great work is just, it's really, really, really hard.
I want to segue. You said so many, so many cooks, so many minds, so many licensors and licensees. It's hard with the control. But then there's another sort of seat at the table, if you will, through AI. Where does it add value? Where does it play a role in really contributing to the not just the process, but the result?
The whole thing is really interesting, but I do think that we are a very long ways off of brands really, really thoroughly using it in like day to day things that you're going to see on TV, on online, or whatnot. But again, I'll say that incredible tool that at least at a minimum allows us to ideate at a way more rapid pace. I think that it is going to be how you start to create like even like basic things like influencers, right? Who look and feel real, right? And then using AI to understand what individuals, audiences want, being able to have this thing manipulate and say the right things to the right person, things that matter, right? I think that's like an easy one. I think in low hanging fruit because influencers play such a pivotal role now for brands. So I think a big breakthrough moment is going to be when these brands really start leaning in and making people that look like individuals and that I might follow and say the things that I believe in and whatnot. Right.
It's interesting. I was on a drive to at Bojangles like a month ago, something like that. I don't often eat fast food, but there's a AI bot now called Bolinda, and she takes your order at the drive-through. And at first, it sounded real, like, that is that AI? But it's like when you were taking the order, she was actually like paying attention. I was traveling with my family at the time. We went to that Bojangles, and you know, both my parents were there, and they were like, I was, we were sort of reminiscing on the fact they kind of saw the whole journey pretty much because they're from like I think they're in the millennial kind of generation, so they saw through the birth of the internet, they saw everything, they saw the whole end to end, like went from having to do stuff.
Eddie, that would be me and
Yeah.
Peggy too.
Yeah.
Okay, be careful now.
Yes.
You're correct, hey, no, I see the generation, the what you call it, the generational like war that people like to
Yeah,
attribute to. I don't believe in that sort of stuff. So
yeah, I agree.
That's
yeah,
I agree.
good because we
I
can
believe
all
every generation learns from each other. So
absolutely could not believe in that more. So we talked about that other seat at the table. That's AI. That's the tech. That's what's going to make this hopefully optimize creatives, optimize the experience. But of course, another way is to ensure that ideas have a seat at the table, right? Everyone has a voice. Now, both of you have advocated for diversity and inclusion within your industries, within your agencies. How do you believe a diverse creative team really influences the innovation process? Maybe even for people out there who aren't quite entirely clear about the benefits here.
It's proven over and over and over again. A simple Google search will show anybody that diverse teams, diverse leaderships results in a higher outcome of revenue for companies. Right? I mean, it's simple fact is you cannot. There is no way you can actually target an individual or a group without thoroughly knowing who those individuals are. And knowing who those individuals are oftentimes means you need to have people who look like those individuals at the table helping to generate ideas for those individuals. If I am targeting individuals Down syndrome or quadriplegics, you better be damn sure straight that I actually have access to those individuals to tell me what I'm doing is right, what I'm doing is real, it's authentic, it's meaningful, it's not being disrespectful, it's not hurting anyone. And a lot of times I think what we see organizations do is they'll have a team that's not truly or thoroughly diverse, do the work, and then like you got like 3 weeks or 2 weeks before launch, they'll say, "Hey, can you look at this real quick?" And at that time, there's no way you can actually change or redirect, a campaign. Diversity absolutely matters, and it's like it's crazy to see how laws now are shutting this stuff down, and companies are coming out and saying, "Well, hey, we're dropping these policies, or officer roles are moving on," and it's really, kind of hard to believe, to be honest with you.
Imsety, what do you want your contribution to be to shaping this future? Because I mean, here you are, you're the Gen Z here. We're doing what we can. I mean, I also did the research. Same for women in diverse organizations. When women are on the board, it's reflected in the bottom line. So the arguments are clear, straightforward, but contributions, that's the question. How do you contribute to shaping this future? What do you think, Imsety?
Well, it's interesting because I know I'm in a unique spot. You mentioned I'm Gen Z, and it made me think about like towards the beginning when I first started it, I wanted to be like, oh, I want to get like everyone my age. I want to have like everyone be, in the same sort of headspace. But I realized, and that that's not the most productive thing to do because in the same vein as how like Walter mentioned that, hey, like you could be in project and it may be going well up until you show it to somebody. Oh, maybe that's not exactly. Maybe that's a little out of. It doesn't match the audience that we were looking at because it was all young people on the hands on with the project. And I think the way that I want to kind of approach this, what I want to do is let's be like, hey, we are a Gen Z company, and be more like we're sort of like in some ways like a all not a like an inclusive to everyone who can just simply do or contribute in a meaningful way. You know what I mean? I've hired people who actually now like way older than me, and I've had moments where they give me, even though sure I was the one to sort of put the ball in the motion, they give very valuable insights that I never would have thought of simply because I don't have as much information as the more established people. And so now there's this kind of like yin and yang mesh effect going on, where if you kind of create a group that has both the young energy and the established energy in one spot, sort of getting the best of both worlds. And that's sort of what I want to create at my company in terms of diversity.
I do thoroughly believe that it's this next generation, Msety's generation, are going to be the individuals that really kind of change the landscape. Because I think there are a generation of individuals who are just so much more open to people, to community, to building community with people that don't look like them. They're just different, right? And I think our generation, Peggy, is very much of the thought of like. Giving more access to someone else means I have to lose something, and I'm not willing to lose something, right? So it's very much like a me. I'm concerned with me, and theirs is about like, hey, like there's room for all of us. Let's figure this shit out together.
That's one of the great quotes. You've been in a lot of articles and podcasts, but I picked up on that one. And it was just, you said that, there are so many companies out there who think creating opportunities for others means, hey, they lose out on an opportunity for themselves. You feel like we're past that a little bit as Imsety's, generation comes more and has more of a voice. Yeah, very far to go, Walt.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
It's going to take a while.
Look, here's the thing: is like when we have these moments, they'll put it's kind of breadcrumbs, right? It's like they'll give a few opportunities to certain people, then that's that. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I've gotten an opportunity. I've fucking worked really hard to get to where I'm at, right? But they're like during this past 4 years, there's been like now 7 Black CCOs in a holding agency in North America, and it's like that's still not nearly good enough when we make up like 0.01%. Right.
And now you're seeing and you're feeling it everywhere. It's like this. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of, just reading it the other day. I was a bit depressed again. The programs, it was like, no, we're cutting that. We're doing something else. It's at least I'm hoping everyone has to show up and stand up. So Imsety and consumers like him, right? People like him will say, well, you're not standing up for what you said you were standing up, and they'll call them on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
So staying with the industry and maybe also looking a little bit to what you're doing. The creative industry itself has to also open up in a sense. It's about technology skills, but it's also artistic creativity, that art and science, that back and forth. Yes, we need customer data, but we also have to let loose and do things. And if that's going to be a metaverse with a skull instead of objects that Imsety made, well, that's is what it is. It's what the audience wants. But there is that tension. So how can that be better addressed? How can the creative industry itself foster an environment where, yes, art and science, particularly for the next generation of creatives and talent, that those blend together as they're supposed to?
I think it's always going to be so like a battle in some ways, and trying to find that perfect balance. I think that perfect balance is very contextual in many cases, because one could say that creativity is like there's art and then there's design, at least that's how I like to think about it. And when you're trying to figure out how to like balance that, is a good way of thinking about, okay, what problem are we solving, and then how can we use creativity to solve that problem.
It's like when you talk about arts and science and the balance between them. Like I don't know. Like I'm even kind of stuck on that question as well, because they almost work in tandem together. Like you have to have them work in tandem together, because they each are a result of each other. Art is the output of science, right? It's the result of science, and science, on the other hand, it's like it creates like different unique methods of art, or the visualization of art, right? So it's a thing that kind of needs to work hand in hand together. um and to be honest with you, I think a lot of the times for brands it's hard to do that, right? Because like, to your earlier point, you were talking about, Peggy, it's like brands very much so at the end of the day are like, I need to do, these are the numbers I need to hit, and this is what this is the results I need to follow, right? And so oftentimes creatives can get in this kind of a blind spot of having to um, do work with that result in mind, as opposed to allowing that kind of like creativity to just bubble and just do what works best to inform or engage individuals. So it's a challenge, and it's difficult, and it could be made easier when you're working with people and or brands or clients that just have a little more flexibility.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see all of that come together, because that is what's happening. I mean, that's what you're both doing in your own ways. You're about looking at the results in advertising, bringing that technology and design together. While you're looking at the creative process, Imsety, I'd love to wrap it up with both of you giving me an idea, because that's what you do, right? It's about ideas. You see what's coming around the corner. You understand what's up and coming. What excites you, or maybe the opposite? What are you saying, like, oh, that's not going to be good, so we're going to have to think differently in order to maybe, yeah, detour around it? So I'll start with you, Mseti.
Sure. I was listening to this podcast. Shout out to School of Motion. They are like a really big motion design podcast in the industry. And one of the guests on that podcast said, just be weird, be more weird, right? And that vibed to me a little bit, because I was like, I think that is, and this now is, that is the most important thing, is just like, be yourself. If you have an idea, you want, like, if you feel like, hey, what happened if I did this? Just try it out and see what happens, because that, I think, in of itself, like Walt was trying to, like, we were trying to figure out how to answer the previous question, and I think that's like, it's like a chicken and egg situation. But to create that, one of them create the, I guess, the egg is to like go in there and experiment in that space. And so that's probably what I'm most excited about, is that if more people kind of stop trying to like follow the same sort of formula, and instead break the formula, look at it, turn it upside down, snap it in half, put it put the thing on the other end. And I'm seeing a lot of agencies that I've worked with in the past, and also that we're working on together, um, where the normal A to B to C story, classic narrative storytelling structure is not working anymore, right? What works better, or at least what's been more engaging recently, is just having, like what Walter was saying earlier, like making people feel something. Even if the actual, what the animated explainer video is, doesn't actually talk deep into the product, if it makes you feel excited about that thing, by just being different, then that's how this is gonna create that change, that difference and that innovation. In the same vein as how I took in and I made that video for Walt, and I was myself from that, right? Um, that is, I think that's my biggest takeaway. Yeah.
Walt, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the future. So you gotta, I think we all need to really be aware of the fact that the way that we consume content now, the way that we search for content now, is entirely different than what it was 10 years ago, right? You know, it's funny, like before I go to a hotel, before I go to a restaurant, I search the hashtag of that restaurant, and then I pull up the location and I look at that in Instagram, and I'm looking at what did this place look like in the past 24 hours. I'm not going to Google and looking up the name and then trying to find pictures in there, and I'm not going to their website. I want to see what real people are actually doing at that location. I go to I went to a restaurant this last Sunday with my wife, and first time we've been to this restaurant. And the first thing she did, the menu came out. She didn't even pick up the menu. She goes into TikTok. She found some influencers that she had followed. And then she literally turned their phone and said, "Can you give me this, this, and this, and this? Everything the influencer just showed. I'll have those." Right. So the way we engage and consume content is just entirely different. And I think brands need to see that. I think creatives need to see that and understand it and build around those experiences, because we're no longer going and just reading paragraphs of stuff to tell me how great something is or how cool something is. And beyond that, I think that what excites me is wearable devices, right? I think Vision Pro, albeit like, it's funny. I just had a picture the other day. I wonder if I still took a picture of this. I had a picture the other day of myself in Oculus, using Oculus Quest or Oculus Quest from like 10 years ago. It was like 10 years ago yesterday. The big square block one, but like black one.
Yeah, I know.
And it was funny. It just came into my thing from yesterday. 10 years ago, I was out showing clients, and I'm looking at it like, oh my God, this is the same fucking form factor as the Vision Pro, with the wire hanging off it and everything. But better technology. But what excites me is where that will eventually go, because I'm a firm believer that big headset will be wearable just like these glasses, and then the next big Google, unless it is Google, right? And I know Amazon's tampering with it as well as Google already, but is going to be the individual who can get object identification through search, right? So as I'm looking at something and I say, whatever, like my microphone is broken, I say, this is broken. And then they'll also say, oh, this is a whatever, sure microphone, da da da, this is that, whatever. Like maybe this is torn, this fat foam, right? It's torn, this foam. And then it says, oh, here, this is what it is. Here's how you can actually, where you can actually purchase it. And here's how you fix it when the next one comes, or the next one comes. I pick it up and I say, how do I replace this? And it says, okay, pull this way, twist this way. So like instructional, informative insights around the things that you're looking at. I'm looking at a brownstone as I'm walking down the street, and I was like, that's a beautiful house. How much is that? That house just sold for $9 million 3 weeks ago. Like that type of visual representation and object identification, I think, is the future of advertising, because then it's going to be entirely around not what I say, not what I type, but what I see.
Yeah. And that's going to be real, by the way, and genuine, because
you
can't fake that with AI. Not that it's faking, but you can't enhance it with AI, is what I meant to say. Speaking of enhance, you've enhanced my day, okay? I don't know if that's a great way to put it, but I am really excited about continuing the conversation elsewhere. But you're up to so much. I'd love to just have an idea. What's next in your lives? I'll start with you, Walt. Living is good. I have to commend you for that. You did share a very personal experience recently, and as a result of it, I've done things like cook and eat food sitting down.
Yeah, this is true.
This is true.
My thing is life is short. We are a dot on a line that potentially could be infinite, right? So my thing is, like just being more in the moment, being present, right? And I'm just letting what comes come. You know what I mean? I'm going to try to worry about today, and then tomorrow.
Imsety, what about yourself?
Cool. No, I'm going to sort of bounce off of what Walt said, because, after hearing about your story a few weeks ago, like it did made me think about like what it really is important, in life and that sort of thing. And as I'm going to always continue to be creating and to be focusing on building my business at Angle and my like all the content that I want to create under those brands. I realized that like it's important to also step back and realize, okay, what am I really doing? What exactly does it mean to be making this? And maybe it's like maybe I should bring back the fun in doing this and not be too focused on overthinking, trying to get the best, perfect, synthetic thing out the door. Turns like y'all can find me. I mean, Imsety.com, right? Everything is on there. All my socials are on there. You can learn more about my agency at sayangle.com as well.
Absolutely delightful to have you both share your views, how you see things, how you're approaching the process as well as the results, and they speak for themselves. Thanks so much, Imsety and Walt, for sharing.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for bringing us together. I mean, really,
Yeah.
it's like putting
Yeah, you
together.
gotta just do it in real life. Now you gotta
Yeah. No, that'd be awesome. Look, well, it's awesome talking with you, like being able to be in a
Indeed.
dialogue, because I don't know, it's always just cool talking about somebody who's has way more like a foundation in this space, and being able to hear your thoughts as well, and be like, wow, I can kind of relate to that, but from a more looking up sort of level, you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of what's happening in our industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, yeah, that's Nick.
Look, man, we all appreciate it. We all learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
It's like all learn from each other, make each other better. So I appreciate it. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.